Good morning. I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive. Today is Monday, September 6th, Labor Day, and we are communicating today, as we have said in the past, because we do have updated information that we need to share with you. We normally have updates on Westchester issues on Mondays, but when I was with you last on Friday, we anticipated that we would not have an update this week. But the impact of Hurricane Ida is so severe and so important to share that we wanted to communicate as to where we are in the recovery from Hurricane Ida, and particularly in terms of what the different levels of government are now tasked with doing, and what you as an individual, if you're suffering from this aftermath, will have to do as well. We'll try to keep this as succinct as possible. I'll be joined in a few seconds by our Deputy Commissioner for the Department of Emergency Services, Susan Spear. We'll talk a little bit about the FEMA role here and what we have to deal with, and just touch a little bit on some of the actions that have happened over the course of the last few days. When I spoke to you on Friday, I had the opportunity to have seen some of the devastation that was wrought by Hurricane Ida. I mentioned in my previous update that Hurricane Henri was much hyped. Ida was a much more surreptitious impact. We thought it would be a rain incident, and it was a rain incident plus the heaviest rain we've seen, intense rain that we've seen in many, many years here in Westchester County. I've had the opportunity now, prior to and then since our update on Friday, to see devastation on Warburton Avenue in Yonkers, on Howard Avenue and Lester Avenue and Washington Avenue in the village of Mamaroneck, all along Elm Street and in Indian Village on Mendota Avenue and Wapanoka Avenue in the city of Rye. I've seen pictures of the devastation that has come to stores in downtown Chappaqua, in downtown Mount Kisco. I've walked Glendale Place in Portchester and Main Street and Glen Avenue at Hasako Avenue, and in places that I haven't traveled to yet, I've seen descriptions of what has happened that has been so dramatically devastating here in Westchester County. As I started to walk down the basement of a restaurant in Portchester, the stench of what happened when everything was lost in the basement, the complete inventory of that store was lost, ruined, and the disaster that it represented, then the economic disaster and the health disaster that it represents. And as I drove streets all across the county, I saw debris piled up that represents not a day's worth of disposal, but a month's worth of disposal, and maybe more than a month's worth of disposal. As I drove on the Hutchinson River Parkway right after it reopened, I saw abandoned cars on the side of the road, and a tow truck coming to pick up one of those cars to transport it someplace, then just to come back later on outside of my line of sight to pick up a second car and then a third car. I'm told that we lost 200 cars in the village of Mamaroneck, significant numbers in many other communities that were hit hard by this. And these are vehicles that, while there's insurance on it and the reimbursement and time and so forth that's yet ahead of us, there are people for whom that was their transportation to get to work, to get to school, to get to a doctor's office, all the different things that we rely on in this society. And those vehicles now are not usable. They are no longer operable, no matter how new they were. I saw a Tesla car that was made immobile and now no longer usable by what happened. So we begin the update by understanding that the loss of property is devastating. The loss of lives is the most devastating thing that can happen. But for people who have survived this, they have still seen their household goods gone. Perhaps the place that they work now will be closed and they won't have a place to be employed for a while. Their mobility is impacted. I saw people with their life belongings out on the street, all worthless, all prepared to be taken away and dumped. Everything we do as a government comes out of our understanding that the role of government comes into play to do those things for people that they can't do for themselves. Most of us are individually strong Americans. We do the things for ourselves that we need to do. We don't want to rely on government, and we don't want to rely on our neighbor necessarily. We believe we can do these things ourselves. But when something like this happens, it is so devastating and so widespread that you must turn to some entity. And in those moments, it's not big government or small government, it's effective government that you want. You want to know that the county government is doing what it can do, the federal government and the state government and the local governments are doing what it can do. I just completed a 1-hour telephone call with our municipal officials, meaning all of our city, state, and village officials were on the line. And we also had representatives of the Westchester County Board of Legislators, including Chairman of the Board, Ben Boykin, who was on the line, and we also had with us members of our state legislative delegation, State Senator Shelley Mayer, Assemblyman Tom Abenanti, and others individuals who participated in the call so that we could talk about state, federal, state, local, county, and municipal governments as we have to work together to try to work through this. And I have to also state, just in the beginning comments, that we have now indications that the remains of a fifth Westchester resident who has died from this flood has now been identified. We now have 5 individuals who've lost their lives because of the flood that came, the rains and floods that came on Wednesday night. And for all of the things we will try to reestablish, the roads that will be rebuilt, the houses that will be fixed or demolished and rebuilt, for all of those things, those 5 lives don't come back. We don't get those people back, and and the family members that lost them do not get to hold them or hug them again on Labor Day or on Thanksgiving Day at the table or in the holiday season, Christmas and New Year. So we must remember that everything that we have to do now, the greatest loss has already occurred in 5 families that do not have their family members with them anymore. Having said that, we have responsibilities to do as a county government. I want to walk with you some of them in very general detail so you understand what it is we're trying to do and in what kind of a sequence. The first most important task that we had as a county government was to make sure that county facilities and structures were open and available to the public. The greatest immediate problem that we had was the opening of our various parkways, the Bronx River Parkway notably, some of our other parkways that flood. Through the day on Thursday, a little bit into Friday with the Bronx River Parkway, we were able to reopen all of our parkways to make sure that we had mobility. Mobility not just because you and I want to travel around, but we need to get emergency vehicles from point A to point B for whatever purposes those are, and so that infrastructure was there. We looked at all of the other infrastructure of our county. We had some damage at the county center, our vaccination center right now. We had some water flooding at the jail, county jail. We had to correct that. That was corrected at that time frame. The airport was intact. Our sewer treatment plants are intact. Our community college was intact. Some of the other assets that we have were intact. Where there are capital needs that will come out of this, we will work with the Board of Legislators, Ben Boykin, the chairman, and other members to authorize capital improvements to make those things happen. But for our purposes, our first task was to get things up and open. The basic task for the individual falls into the next basic task of the county government and the local government, and that is to clear out all that was damaged and is now no longer healthy and usable, to be able to remove that from a residential premise. That removal of garbage and debris is our first major governmental responsibility, and in that regard, over this weekend, we held open our transfer stations in Mount Vernon and Yonkers to be able to accommodate the local governments that pick up the trash and the debris and, in some cases, construction material. It's a little more complicated than I can explain and perhaps more complicated than I know, but the bottom line is, if you look at a house and you see all of the debris that is now ruined, there's mold, it's wet, it can't possibly be used, you move it out of your building. You try to get your place as empty as is possible so it can be properly cleaned, and that at some point in time you can get authorization to turn back on power, turn back on water, and try to resume a normal life. That debris that you get out to the curb then is picked up by your local government. Your city, your state, or your village is tasked with picking up that garbage and bringing it to a transfer station, a number of different locations in Westchester County. Then the county government takes over and transports it from that location to our Charles Point facility. That's not our facility, but the facility that we contract at Charles Point, run by Wheelabrator, to dispose of it properly. Obviously, there's some other things about recycling that gets segmented from the garbage stream. But right now, we're looking at a tremendous amount on street corners, on sidewalks, everywhere in this county, material that must be taken out of the home for health and sanity's sake, and to be able to be removed so that it doesn't sit there for 3, 4, 5 days. To make that possible, we opened up our transfer stations over the weekend, ran the overtime necessary, the personnel necessary. We appreciate our Department of Environmental Facilities for stepping into the breach to be able to do those things. And then the local governments, each depending on the nature of the need in their communities, have ramped up their collection process. So that in that regard, the municipal governments and the county government have worked to try to do the first job, which is to clear out all of those situations. The second most important situation for the individual is shelter. Whether or not they have a habitable environment that they live in. And that is a decision that is based on what is happening in the home itself. The homeowner makes the decision whether or not they can stay there or not. Without electricity, it's still fairly warm this time of the year. If your damage is in the basement, but you have ability in the upper rooms that they were undamaged, that you can stay in the home during that period of time, that's fine. If your home or your apartment has been totally destroyed, and you cannot live there, then local governments in some cases have created temporary shelters which can accommodate an overnight or a two-night accommodation. But then our Westchester County Department of Social Service steps in to try to provide some temporary housing for those people who are now made homeless by this disaster. And then the longer-term issues that come up for the individual. It depends often on the individual's resources. If a person has resources and their home is inhabitable and they have the resources, they can stay at a hotel if they choose to do that and have the resources to do that. But for those people that do not have those resources, the county's Department of Social Service is there to assist, and that is one of the next step actions that you, the individual, take if you know that you cannot stay in your house and you're not going to stay at a cot at the local high school gymnasium for more than a night or two just for immediate purposes. The next most immediate responsibility is to feed your family. And the county government, as previously budgeted in our budget and now with the availability of some federal funds, are working with Feeding Westchester, the local food pantries, to put more money into free food distribution for those people in need. There's already been an increase in the need for food security based on the COVID crisis where people lost their jobs. Our various food pantries are showing a big jump up already. This now will become astronomical in the next few days. We will be posting on our website, westchestergov.com, information about food distribution. We encourage you to go to Feeding Westchester's website where there's a more complete explanation of the various food pantries and the various types of programs. All of this is a temporary way to get you through a certain situation. We know that we cannot, as a county government, feed the people of Westchester County on an ongoing basis, but we're trying to respond to this emergency so that we get through this emergent period of time. And we know that we have a certain window of time because we're not far from weather getting colder and becoming more difficult. But that aspect of feeding becomes very important. On the transportation side, many people have lost their mobility, have lost their cars. Depending on where you go to school, where you work, we will be assessing our Beeline bus system to determine if there are things that we need to do to increase the amount of ridership, to make it more available for people who can use that system to accommodate their transport. Some people can't, depending on where you start out and where you end up in a given day for work or where you might have to travel for school. But to the extent that the Beeline bus system can be enhanced, we will be looking at those changes, whether it's additional passenger service on that to try to determine what we can do to be helpful on that for transport. And then most importantly, for you to be able to get the resources you need to rebuild your life through your home and what have you. We've just gotten word this morning that the petition from Governor Hochul to the President, to the White House, has been approved at the White House, so that will open the door for FEMA availability for municipal purposes and also for individual purposes. That will just start to roll out now. We intend to put on our website, westchestergov.com, relevant forms that you can look for and download. I would say that'll happen today somewhere after 3 o'clock as we try to organize ourselves throughout the course of the morning. If it's 4 o'clock, be patient so that you can get the information you need. There will be, as you download forms and instruction sheets, that will give you some basic information about what you have to do to apply. We do expect to have a disaster recovery center established in Westchester County by FEMA. We are lobbying as a county government for it to be a mobile presence where it can set up an office in one location, accept applications, and then move to another location. And we're also advocating for virtual applications as well as those that are done in person. Normally it's a personal interview to make sure that the individual who is seeking this reimbursement is trackable and reliable. Whether it can be done virtually or not, we don't know. That is the advocacy from our Department of Emergency Services along those lines. I do want to ask our Deputy Commissioner, Susan Spear, to join us at the podium to talk a little bit about that FEMA process and some of the input that she has on the call that she's had this week.
Thank you so much, County Executive. We do appreciate your effective leadership throughout. So, news you can use, yes, we did receive the federal disaster declaration. It's a major disaster declaration, which means that triggers federal assistance for both our municipal facilities as well as for individual residential damage and small business assistance as well. We are so grateful to our Governor Hochul and President Biden for expediting this process. It really means the world to us here, so we can get the assistance that we need immediately. What this means right now is that individuals will be able to apply for assistance for reimbursements for their uninsured damages. We urge you right now, take pictures, keep receipts, document everything. This is a reimbursement process, so we do tell you that this is a really important tip, that the more documentation and photographs you have, the better off you're going to be as you go through this process. I do want to say that FEMA and the state have been on the ground here in Westchester from day one. I've been through a lot of storms. I'm sure many of you have also. I've never seen the state and the federal government come through as quickly on the ground here in Westchester to respond to people's needs as I have with this storm. And we thank President Biden and Governor Hochul for that assistance. As the county executive said, we look forward to the disaster recovery centers being established here in Westchester, and we really do want to make a virtual online option available for people. We're going to be working with some of the local libraries if you don't have connectivity in your homes because of the storm or for any other reason. Our Emergency Operations Center is still in effect, and we are working with the Emergency Operations Center in Mamaroneck. We have staff down there as well, so we can coordinate any needs immediately back and forth between the county and the localities. And I also want to give a special thanks to our fire mutual aid system, the state and our neighboring counties, as well as all of our municipal fire departments and EMS have come together through the state mutual aid system to respond very swiftly to our rescues and to our recovery operation. So with that, I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Susan. That was Susan Spear, who's our Deputy Commissioner of the Department of Emergency Services. We're very grateful to Susan, Commissioner Richard Wishney, Dennis Del Borgo, who directs emergency management there, and so many other folks who work for county government in that department, by acronym DES. We also want to extend the same thanks to Vincent Kapicki, who's Commissioner of our Department of Environmental Facilities. That runs the sewer treatment plants and also the garbage transfer function in Westchester County. He and Lou Vitrone, Mario and Melissa, all the people in that operation have worked all weekend and put time and energy and effort to be helpful in that score. Our DPW department, under the direction of Commissioner Hugh Grecian, which also has the transportation function underneath it, has done yeoman work, and we've got a lot of work ahead of us. We're nowhere near where we need to be, but that effort is underway, and I thank Susan and her department for those works. I've mentioned that we had a municipal call this morning where we identified a number of different needs. We are working with the various municipalities to codify the specific needs that they have on public elements. I saw a roadway in Harrison that had collapsed, things that have been torn up in the village of Portchester and public access roads. So all of these things will go into the general municipal identification of reimbursement for FEMA, separate and distinct from what the individual homeowner is going through now. But I want to reinforce what Susan said. Make a list of all of the different items that you have lost because of this. And, couch, bed, whatever it is, all those things, you have to identify them, try to make an estimate of price as to what the value of those things were. On the presumption that you have already or you will do before it's finally gone, take pictures of it so you can document those things. Those things will be essential in order for you to get the reimbursement that you need and that you deserve to have. I want to highlight that as we go forward, we will be tapping our various departments for other needs. I mentioned that our transportation department will look at Beeline bus needs. We know that before a person can go back into a home that has been impacted by the floods, they're going to have electrical wiring replaced or perhaps water redone, and there'll have to be certifications by local inspectors that is okay. We're also looking at the Westchester County Department of Health providing the function of looking to determine that they are a healthy environment to move back into relative to mold and things that could affect a person's health. So our Department of Health has worked overtime times 10 in the last 18 months since COVID came along, and now we have to turn to them again to put more energy and time and effort into all of these different things. I want to ask the chairman of our Board of Legislators to join me at the podium. Legislator Ben Boykin has chaired the board now. This is the completion of his fourth year, second term as chairman's position I held a number of years ago. The importance of having a legislative branch and an executive branch work together in time of crisis is essential. There is a natural check and balance between an executive and a legislative branch. It happens in Washington, it happens in Albany, it happens here in White Plains. But in moments like this, our tasks and functions might be different, but they're coordinated to the end of trying to serve the people of Westchester. So, Mr. Chairman, please address our friends in Westchester.
Thank you, County Executive Latimer, and to Deputy Commissioner Susan Spear of Emergency Services, and to all the outstanding employees of the County Executive's Department that have been working overtime to address this disaster. Hurricane Ida was a disaster for Westchester County. All the legislators have been out in their communities, working with the local municipal officials to assess the damage and to work with individuals through the recovery. I know that some of the legislators have put up and have worked with individuals who've set up volunteer services so that they would help with removal of debris from various homes. Many individuals have been devastated by this disaster, and we at the Board of Legislators will work collaboratively with the executive branch to pass any legislation that is needed, that is necessary, to expedite the process so that we can help the individuals of Westchester County. We know that there will be certain legislation that will be required. We're ready, willing, and able to cut all red tape to make sure that we provide resources to the individuals that need it. Also, the Board of Legislators will be sending out e-newses to update you on how you can apply for FEMA, how you can do other things. You heard the Deputy Commissioner talk about keeping receipts, make pictures, so that because the more information that you have will help the process for your recovery. We also know that many individuals do not have flood insurance. And also from hurricanes, there's a large deductible that you have to meet. So this is going to be a major impact on individuals. Individuals have lost everything. Some have lost their lodging facilities. Others' homes have been damaged. I've been out through District 5, as all other legislators have been out in their district, and they have seen the damage. They've seen the remnants that are out on the curve to be picked up, and we really appreciate the municipalities for picking up, and also the county executive for keeping our recovery centers open so that debris could be placed there. Again, the Board of Legislators is here to work with the county executive and his team to make sure that we provide the resources that are necessary to the residents of Westchester County. We know this is a very difficult time, but working together, we will get through this. It is not going to be an easy task. It is going to be a long-term situation, but we are there for you, and we will continue to work with you. Thank you, County Executive George Latimer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Ben Boykin of the Westchester County Board of Legislators. We appreciate the cooperation of all of our colleagues in government. I had the opportunity this weekend to be with Legislator Nancy Barr, Legislator Catherine Parker, Legislator Ruth Walter, in a number of these different locations, in Mount Vernon, in New Rochelle, in Greenburgh, and a number of other places. So, and alongside of our state legislative delegation, along the Sound Shore, which was very heavily hit. State Senator Shelley Mayer, State Assemblyman Steve Otis was there. State Assemblywoman Amy Paulin. I was with her in New Rochelle. All of our elected officials understand the urgency that's here and the need to work cooperatively across different levels of government, across different political parties. This is not the time for politics as usual. This is the time for us to work together, try to solve problems. So I'm just going to summarize where we are at this stage of the game. We are in the beginning of what could be a long recovery for individuals and for communities at large. We as a county government are using our efforts to try to make sure that we get the debris off the streets in concert with local governments, that we try to provide whatever transportation assistance we can through the Beeline bus system, that we identify resources that the federal government has given us that can be used for sheltering in an emergency situation, providing food in an emergency situation. We have Shari Rosen Asher, who is our Director of Public Policy and Programs with small businesses, and she's reaching out to local chambers of commerce to identify the small businesses that have been affected, and there are many that have been affected by this, and some were teetering during COVID, and hopefully this won't be the fatal blow, but we hope to be able to help our small businesses work through this thing, the effort that we hope to have through our health department. We work by sharing data with local governments, by doing work that complements what they may be doing in the short term, and we do it on a sort of a mid-level term. We're working with the state government. We know that the governor has the capacity to order out the National Guard, and she may yet determine that that's needed in some of our localities as requested by some of our mayors and supervisors. And of course, at the end of the day, we look forward that the federal government and through the Federal Emergency Management Agency will be able to help us with reimbursements and financial help. So I say in closing this off, to the people that I saw on Glendale Place in Port Chester, to the people that I saw on Warburton Avenue in Yonkers, to the people that I saw on Howard Avenue and Lester Avenue in the village of Mount Vernon, to the businesses in downtown Chappaqua and Mount Kisco, we are not omnipotent as a government. We are not as omnipotent as a people. Mother Nature has shown us our vulnerability. Once again, if we had forgotten, if we became too self-satisfied, we would brought to our knees once again. And now the question is how we get up, how we work together, how we work through this. There's anguish out there now. There's people who are suffering right now. We must try to help them in whatever way we can. We understand it won't be an immediate fix, but it has to be a persistent, consistent effort to try to make that fix, and we will try to do all of that to the best of our ability, working alongside of other governments, working alongside businesses, not-for-profit organizations, religious institutions, the whole range of what makes up Westchester County. I'm going to close my comments today where I opened it. The greatest tragedy of all of this is the loss of 5 lives. That 5 individuals are gone. Now, we mourn the loss of 2,311 people who died from COVID over the course of the last 18 months. But it's not about the number, it's about the humanity. And an incident like this shows us that we're all human. On the Wednesday night that the storm came in, I was in this building working late, and I decided to get a quick bite to eat in the immediate vicinity. And as I drove on 287 about 8:30, quarter to 9 at night, I was driving through an intense rainstorm that looks the same way it looks if you ever sit in your car when you go through a car wash. And I couldn't believe that I had waited that long to leave to head to my home. As I drove through the rain, at that same time, 5 other people were out in their cars. So as easy as it was them, it could have been me or any one of us. That should make us humble. That should make us understand that our wealth and our status, title, the things that we may or may not have accomplished in our life really don't mean anything at the end of the day, because we are all human beings subject to the same realities of life. Let that be a lesson to me, and if you find it relevant to you, let it be a lesson to you that we are all in this together, and we will get through this together. I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive. Thank you for watching. I hope this was helpful, and I hope you'll consult the Westchester Gov website and other websites so that you can download information. And as I've said, I hope all of those websites will carry the same information so you can find it from whatever source that's helpful to you. Have a good day. Have a good Labor Day. Thank you to the men and women of labor for what they've done. And let me also offer our Jewish brothers and sisters, L'Shana Tova. May they have a sweet new year. And we'll speak to you soon. Have a good day.